Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all here. Good to see that so many people are joining us today to hear about this webinar on CDP. My name is Raphael Egner-Müller, and I'm a consultant here at CEMAsys. I'm going to be moderating this webinar, and that we're very excited to bring you all today. We have managed to get a lot of interesting panelists to join us today, so thank you to all of you who are going to be talking today. And before we get into the subject that matter, I just have a few house rules to go through. So first of all, this is a Teams webinar, so it's normal that there's only a few people with the camera on and that are able to speak. Otherwise, your camera will be muted and turned off. That's the point. Otherwise, we're also going to be recording this webinar. And finally, we will not be answering any live questions during the webinar, but you can always contact us at news@CEMAsys.com afterwards, where we'll do our best to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, now that we have gotten this practical information out of the way, let's talk about why we're here, which is CDP. So here at CEMAsys, we have noticed that more and more of our clients are looking into reporting to the CDP, and that the CDP is constantly evolving and constantly changing the requirements for companies to get good grades. So this is basically the reason why we decided to have this webinar today, in order to shed some lights and give some insights into this CDP world. So the agenda today is going to be the following. So first, we're going to be starting with my colleague Karen, who is next to me, who is going to be presenting CEMAsys and what we do with CDP and what we do in general. Then afterwards, we have been so lucky to have Agata from CDP, who is going to be presenting a little bit from the other side, directly to show a company's journey through the CDP. Then after that, we have managed to get three representatives from three of our clients who are going to be presenting each a different part of the CDP journey. So first we will have Marit from Elkem, who will share Elkem's experience with how they have governed ESG and climate risk. After that, we will have Deline from Scatec, who will talk about Scatec's journey and how reporting to CDP has helped them. And then last but not least, we will have Emine from Storebrand, who will present their approach to biodiversity and how that ties into the new regulations for the CDP. Thus, without further ado, I will give my colleague Karen the word. Karen works as a senior consultant here with us. She has done so since 2018. She works with a broad range of clients and has a focus on CDP. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Raphael. And first of all, we are very excited to see that so many of you have joined this webinar about CDP. We in CEMAsys deliver solutions for the whole environmental, social, and governance segment, including support and guidance to the CDP reporting. As a specialized sustainability consultancy company, we offer both a software solutions to measure and gather relevant ESG data, where we have 5 different reporting modules, which you can see on this slide, as well as we offer expertise with analyzing and helping companies improving their sustainability strategy, reporting, and other ESG-related work. We are based in the Nordic countries, but we work with companies all over the world, and we are also opening an office in Boston quite soon. CDP is one of our core services, and we have been a CDP Silver accredited partner since 2010. This means that we have over 11 years of experience with helping companies improving their CDP responses and also internal CDP work. We in CEMAsys employ a holistic approach in order to include the entire ESG process and improve a company's sustainability performance. In our work, we see that many of our customers are using the CDP reporting process in order to improve their internal work with ESG strategies, climate risks and opportunities, measuring and reducing carbon emissions, and setting targets. We have a high statistic on A-listed companies, and last year, 100% of our new customers improved their previous CDP score. This year, we are helping over 60 stock listed and private companies to report to CDP, which is great since CDP has over 590 investors. So reporting to CDP is a great way to communicate to investors of how your company is working with ESG-related topics. CDP is also a great way to see and evaluate how climate change is reporting is affecting your company financially, which is also aligned with other relevant frameworks, such as the TCFD framework. As you may have noticed, CDP is every year changing and updating the scoring requirements, questionnaires, and topics in order to always be as relevant and updated as possible in a field of ESG, which is always in developing. An example of this is the new chapter of biodiversity, which has been included now for the 2022 reporting. And we are very excited to see that Emine from Storebrand is going to talk more about this from an investor perspective later on. At the end, we have included this slide just to show that we are helping our customers with CDP reporting in several ways. We are, for example, doing gap analysis and score checks in order to quality check and evaluate the answers up to the most updated methodology and guidances, as well as we provide project support and advisory services through the whole CDP process, which includes, for example, helping formulating answers and doing relevant calculations. If you want to hear more about this, you can contact us at news@CEMAsys.com. And then I give the word back to you.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Very interesting. For our next speaker, we will then have Agatha, who works as an account manager at CDP Europe. Agatha will give us an insight directly from the CDP, where she's primarily responsible for helping corporations with their environmental strategies through technical support and data-driven best practices for companies answering to CDP. So the floor is yours, Agatha. We look forward to hear from you.
Great, thank you, Rafael and Karin, and thank you, CEMAsys, for inviting me for this webinar. I'm super happy to be able to represent CDP today. Let me just... Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm Agata Czerwińska, and I'm account manager for reporter services. And my main responsibilities at CDP, as Rafael already mentioned, is helping companies improving the quality of their reporting by better understanding the methodologies, the updates on the methodologies, helping them incentivize forward-looking actions and defining the roadmaps for the actions that are already taken. So today's agenda comprises of those 5 main points. I will say a few words on what is CDP, then I'll go on to the benefits of improving your reporting. Also, I mentioned what characterizes an A-scoring company, and I will focus on the forward-looking considerations. And at the end, I will speak about the new module on biodiversity. So for those who are not familiar with CDP, we are an international non-for-profit organization working with companies, investors, cities, states, and regions to measure and manage their environmental impacts. So in short, CDP provides online platform where companies can report on their environmental performance through our thematic questionnaires that align with various frameworks. And since we have been established 20 years ago, we are the gold standard when it comes to environmental reporting by regulators, institutions, investors, and corporations worldwide. So the objective of the questionnaire is to catalyze different and better decision-making actions by the private sectors and local governments in order to manage climate change. And they are the 5 main benefits of improving your reporting. As you know, a CDP questionnaire can work as a tool to guide you through this environmental strategy. So the main 5 points is benefits with protecting and improving your reputation. So disclosing to CDP gives this transparency, which is the key aspect, and you can demonstrate your commitment to measuring and reduction impacts. on the climate directly to your stakeholders and investors. Through the disclosing, through the CDP questionnaire and disclosing consistently year on year, you can identify emerging environmental risks and opportunities as well that will increase your awareness and drive the data-driven environmental strategy. Obviously, you can also get ahead of the regulations. So by disclosing to CDP, you're managing environmental reporting, regulatory risk, as increasing numbers of countries are now imposing more stringent regulations on corporate reporting, actually. Next is you can boost your competitive advantage by disclosing to CDP, and it can give you competitive edge in stock market performance and give you access to capital and also to winning tenders. And the CDP scoring approach incentivizes and helps companies identify the next key environmental actions that you should be taking, like setting ambitious targets, and the overall score and category scores provide effective kind of summarize indicators to help you set your help you and your stakeholders track progress and benchmark against your peers. So in the next couple of slides, I will briefly mention and give you an overview of the main questionnaire modules and their best practices, and these are aligned with TCFD recommendations. So here in the governance, a company with strong governance as the best practice would have a board-level oversight of climate-related issues, and these would be fully integrated into governance mechanism with monetary incentives for management to report climate-related issues. As for the risk management, also aligned with TCFD recommendations, a leading company would have a full quantification of potential risks and also opportunities in terms of the potential financial impacts and cost of managing such a risk, or a cost of responding to the opportunity, with obviously supporting rationales behind those risks and opportunities. And when it comes to the metrics, companies at the leadership level, at the leadership stage, should have already disclosed and calculated emissions for Scope 1, for Scope 2, both location and market based when it comes to Scope 2, and have already a robust Scope 3 disclosure. And this all should be supported by absolute emission reduction targets, ideally. And all this should be accompanied as well by specific activities to help with the reduction of those emissions, and have already substantive share of their total energy consumption and generation coming from renewable energies. And as for the targets, so best practice is to have strong targets approved by Science-Based Target Initiative. That these targets should cover both Scope 1 and 2, and the coverage should be at least 95% from the base year. And additionally, a leading company would also have a Scope 3 emissions as well. So here I'll just focus on those forward-looking considerations that go maybe already within the questionnaire, but also kind of beyond, and they're ahead of today's questionnaire, but important to consider. So providing information on quantitative targets and qualitative goals, and the progress that is made against these targets can demonstrate your organization or company commitment to improving climate-related issues at the corporate level. So the most recent science indicates that the global emissions must be halved by 2030. Therefore, the organizations and the various companies should take immediate actions and increase the ambitions by setting, first of all, net zero targets that should not extend go beyond 2050. And they should be having their emission reduction targets aligned with 1.5-degree future that is approved by Science-Based Target Initiative. Also for the CDP kind of perspective and the methodology, we also encourage company to have 4.2% emission year-on-year reductions to the target year. That's for the CDP route that we have in the questionnaire. If your company has not yet approved the targets approved of the Science-Based Target Initiative. And also you should have credible scope 3 targets to fulfill the criteria as well, leadership criteria. So these are the best forward-looking practices when it comes to the target sections. In the question now, I'll move to the climate transition plan. So in the recent years, there's been growing interest from investors and customers on how companies plan on tackling the climate crisis. And they are looking at CDP because we have the biggest data sets when it comes to environmental issues. And the need for increased corporate ambitions alongside clear accountability mechanism is obvious. And there is significant pressure for greater transparency around how companies plan to transition their business model to one that is aligned with that net zero carbon economy. So in the CDP questionnaire, in the section 3, there's a modified question, let's say, and the companies are asked whether they have transition plan, and the best practice is obviously to have one, and it should be publicly available and have mechanism in place to collect feedback from your stakeholders. And also there is no good transition plan if it's not supported by science-based targets, both on near and long-term basis. Engaging with your value chain on environmental performance is a best practice and key for robust sustainability strategy that your company have in place or should have in place. And you as a company in the corporate level, you should be you can use that power, purchasing power, to drive those actions. So this questionnaire section C12 seeks to ascertain which companies are engaging in the best practices of working with upstream and downstream partners to reduce negative environmental impact. So currently the best practice for both suppliers and customers engagement is to cover at least 40% of the procurement spend when it comes to suppliers, and 40% of the customer by number, or 40% of customer related scope 3 emissions that you report in the sections in the question C6.5. As a forward-looking consideration, you should be encouraging or requiring your suppliers to set science-based target, but you should accompany them and help them construct those actionable roadmaps to achieve those goals and unlock substantial growth. And this takes me to biodiversity, which is our new module this year. This is the new strategy for CDP to expand to this E for the environmental part, to cover planetary boundaries, including oceans, land use, biodiversity in this case. So there's been increased demand for biodiversity-related data that will enable financial institution to develop investment strategies and to engage effectively with companies to address the loss of forest and biodiversity that is exposing them to risk throughout their value chain. And CDP is broadening the environmental issues covered in its questionnaire, climate questionnaire, in this particular case, starting with the inclusion of the on the company's approaches to maintaining and addressing the biodiversity. And as a first step this year in 2022, 6 broad questions has been introduced on governance, commitments, monitoring, and reporting on biodiversity issues. And these questions are material to all sectors and all geographies, and responses will so the responses for that biodiversity question will inform future metrics, ensuring the relevance and usefulness of biodiversity corporate reporting to both financial institutions and policymakers. And here it's the overview of those 6 questions. I won't have time to go into details of those, but feel free to access the guidance on those questions and questionnaire for 2022 at our website at cdp.net. So that's all from my side. Thank you for listening, and I will pass it to Marit now.
Yes, thank you, Agata. I think it's very interesting to hear how CDP can help companies disclose and report on their climate initiatives, but also how CDP can help companies towards climate leadership. So it's a very interesting presentation. Thank you for that. So now we're going to be hearing a little bit from the other side. Now we've heard from CDP. Now we're going to be hearing from one of our private clients. We're going to be hearing from Marit from Elkem. Marit works as ESG manager for Elkem and focuses on external reporting and communication on ESG matters for Elkem as a whole. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk in this webinar. I have to apologize if there's some sort of background noise because I'm sitting in a public school space, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'm going to jump straight into what we are here to talk about today. Why are we spending so much time and effort on reporting and disclosing information on climate-related information, and particularly to the CDP? It started off as an investor action, but now we are using it also as a tool to improve our internal processes, and I will talk a little bit more about that in my presentation. Elkem is a Norwegian-based company that has 3 business areas: silicones, silicon products, and carbon solutions. We believe that we are part of the solution for providing products for a better and more sustainable future. And we have the entire value chain from extracting quartz from the Earth's crust and using renewable energy from carbon solutions to make silicon and ferrosilicon, and then all the way to silicones. These applications go into a wide range of products, such as windmills, electronics. You've probably heard of Silicon Valley. The reason why it's called Silicon Valley is because our silicon goes into electronics, cars, and more EVs from the original old cars, medical equipment, buildings, bridges, home supplies, basically what you see in your daily life. If I can move forward. So this is a little bit of who we are. We have a global reach, although based in Norway. We are about 7,000 employees, and the main locations are Norway, France, and China. Our scopes, scope 1, 2, and 3 are in scope 1, we have 2.52 million tons. Scope 2 is location-based and 901,000 tons. And scope 3 is 8.54 million tons, meaning that we have over 10 million tons altogether in our total scopes. Our scope 1 emissions are mainly from our smelters, and they are mainly based in Europe. And for context, I would say that our Norwegian emissions are 3% of the total Norwegian emissions base, our scope 1 emissions. So just a ballpark of what we're working on here. We started disclosing information to the CDP and in 2020. And as a background, we used it then as an internal gap finder to see where we lacked information and what we had. And in 2020, the management found out that we are actually lacking some key goal setting and key global aspects of the company. So it all spiraled into creating this global climate roadmap that was announced in 2021. And we have worked internally on this roadmap and set ambitions. And we are also using this roadmap to understand how we can go further, because we have not set science-based target yet. We are committed to reduce our emissions and contribute to the Paris Agreement, but the first ambitions that we set for in 2021 are not science-based targets aligned. So that's our sort of next step now, using this climate roadmap, which is the first global roadmap we have, to further increase our ambitions. So the roadmap is divided into 3. obviously reducing our own emissions are key for a company like Elkem with high own emissions. And then number 2 is trying to see what we can do with the products we provide to the market and see how we indirectly can provide our develop our products to support the green transition. And then number 3, which is the most immature for us, is develop and enable more circular economies. But let's talk more about the actual reporting and what we have done. As you all know, there are a lot of acronyms in this space, so I'm sorry for that. But if you have questions on what they mean, you can probably get a very good response from CEMAsys later on. So we started our reporting journey in 2011, 2012, when we became our own company again after some years under an umbrella in Norway. And in 2018, we were relisted on the Norwegian Stock Exchange, and that really spiraled a lot of interest into the company. And then, as we all know, that investor relations and investor information has really increased the last years. So this has really been a journey for us, and it's really shows that you just need to take one step at a time to improve in this, and you don't need to necessarily feel that you have to do best performance in the first time in your first part of the journey. So this is for us a 10-year-long journey now, and we're still obviously on that journey. What we found also was that the interest of the company and the information that they wanted from us was a lot and extensively, and we were not able to capture that in a very systematic way. And that's what CDP has helped us with, is to structure the information that investors and other stakeholders, customers, are interested in, to show how we work, and then give them an in-depth understanding of our governance structure, our procedures, our line responsibility, target setting, and so on, in a very understandable way for both us to present and for our investors, and that has really helped us a lot. We'll move forward. So we really see that the stakeholders of Elkem is driving us to disclose more information and pushing us to understand where we have the greatest impact. And I would say that the changes in the last maybe 2-3 years has been that all our stakeholders expect more now than they did 4 years ago. And they all push us to disclose more information. So here we have an overview of our stakeholders. In the big picture, our regulatory compliance is pushing us. Regulatory and politicians are asking for more information, and so are investors, so are customers, and so are our employees. So it's really just a push to give more information. In 2021, we hit 2 milestones that are relevant. I've already talked about the roadmap, but we also disclosed the TCFD report for the first time, which was also a helpful tool guiding us in the CDP disclosures. And we will also use it, of course, actively when disclosing for this year. And you can find these these are available online. I'm running a little bit out of time, but I will quick. I just wanted to show you that it's a stone and stone approach for us, and we as an industry company, we are using our DNA as a continuous improver to build on this and improve. And this timeline just shows us that we have from the journey in 2018, we have been improving and using CDP, TCFD, and all these to improve internally. And also at the end of this, finally coming to a place where we can report on scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, and also starting to set targets on these areas. So don't be discouraged with the amount of information you need. Just start somewhere, start with your most material scope 1s and build on that would be my message here. So at the top of this, what we found was most effectful when we started off this journey was that a management commitment always helps. And this comes from the push of our stakeholders, obviously. They started to ask questions, and then the management had to answer. And answering CDP showed us that there was a gap in our system where we internally decided what we needed to improve. And we used the TCFD framework because it seemed like the most relevant tool for us, and really starting to use it as a plug-and-play system. And it has changed the management focus internally. And we can also use it as a year-round tool, both the TCFD framework, but also the CDP process, to not just do it once a year with a reporting structure, but use it every day to see where are our gaps on improving to become the best and the leader in this sphere. And at the end of it, it's really the proof is in the pudding. Our results are here. We got A-listed in 2020, A- in 2021. Also included water in 2021, and in 2022 we will for the first time disclose on forest. We were top 1 listed in Platinum EcoVadis for the first time in 2022, and have also improved our ratings with the most important ESG rating companies the last years, because we have focused on disclosing information, but also closing the gaps that they are looking for, and they prefer us to close. So really using it internally as an improvement catalyst. So I would just close off by saying this might be a little bit hard to read, but there are some key takeaways in this. You have to get an overview of what the gaps are in your organization. You have to start to prioritize, because even big companies like Elkem can't do everything at once, and we also have limited resources. And start with setting targets. You can start with the low-hanging fruits. Try to engage relevant colleagues and experts in your organization. It doesn't have to be necessarily that they are really good at climate, but what trigger them in their daily life. Start gathering data and report on progress. Be very specific. Stop wasting time on blah, 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 but try to be as specific as possible. Be prepared to be honest on what your issues are and where you are today to be able to improve, also externally. Show the complete picture and not just the opportunities that you have in this space, but also the challenges. There's always help with the top management commitment. And you can also, through this seminar and other seminars and a lot of information online, Steal with Pride, because this is really a space where we can share information. And I would just finish off with saying that I think we now are moving from what is house cleaning and where we should be and what we should report on, to actually seeing that this will transform us. And using reporting and CDP as an active tool for this is really key for a company like Elkem. And just if you have any questions, you can contact me or CEMAsys, and good luck on your reporting journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a very interesting presentation. I think it was very interesting to hear how basically it also, reporting to the CDP also helped you structure the way that you are moving forward with your sustainability work, instead of just being something you report on the side. I think that's a very interesting point that you brought up there. So thank you for that, Marit. Our next speaker is going to be Deline. Deline works as a senior sustainability advisor for Scatec, focusing on Scatec's work when it comes to ESG, reporting, assurance, and external ratings, such as CDP, for example. I hand it over to you now, Deline.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here with you all today, virtually. And yeah, really a good opportunity, as the previous speakers have said, to be able to share learnings and to speak amongst each other. It seems like there's a lot of similarities. We do face some of the same challenges and we see some of the same opportunities. Great. I'm very happy to speak today about Scatec's CDP journey, as well as how engagement has and still plays a crucial role in that. So today I'll provide a very brief introduction to our company, speak about how CDP and reporting to CDP has influenced and guided our climate actions, refer to our climate strategy, focus on why engagement and collaboration with key suppliers is very much an integral part of reaching our climate goals. So Scatec is a renewable energy solutions provider. We work to ensure access to reliable and affordable clean energy. We are a long-term player as we develop, build, own, and operate renewable energy plants. We currently have 3.5 gigawatts of installed capacity across 4 continents, and we have more than 600 passionate employees who are driven by a common vision of improving our future. ESG is a key part of our operating model. It is integrated within each phase of our projects, and we have dedicated ENS colleagues in every project. In our experience, ESG very much provides a competitive advantage in attracting partners and reducing risk. Scatec has been reporting to CDP since 2019, and we've found great value in the comprehensive review of our company's performance regarding climate matters. It does take some hours to fill in the CDP questionnaire for the first time. The opportunities and development areas flagged really allowed us to take learnings back into our organization and implement them with different business units. And there's a great appreciation of the detailed disclosure by our stakeholders. We definitely had our CDP journey made a lot easier through strong support from an experienced external partner, advisable for companies planning to report to CDP for the first time. In 2021, we developed a climate strategy and roadmap that has milestones and key initiatives for reaching our climate targets. A first step was to analyze the life cycle emissions of a project, where we reviewed our direct and indirect emissions. We found that the most significant emissions were within scope 3 from main component production. So this will be, for example, solar modules, trackers, wind turbines, and other main products. This is represented in the graph on the screen as capital goods. With our climate target set and the goal of net zero by 2040, our ambitions for Scope 3 definitely require engagement and collaboration with our key suppliers. We see that Chapter 12 of the engagement questionnaire on the climate section stresses the importance of reducing global emissions within industries by encouraging engagement between various partners in the value chain. It will be very, very difficult for one partner to do that all by themselves. For Scatec, it was important for us to firstly understand our emission sources to be able to target our efforts accordingly. We had then set and communicated our climate targets internally and externally and committed to the Science-Based Target Initiative. We had then reached out and started working together with key suppliers. Now, from a practical point of view, and in responding to CDP aligned to our climate roadmap and strategy, we had focused on 3 main areas. Firstly, information collection. So we were introduced to our key suppliers and the correct contact persons by our responsible supply chain team. This really allowed us to build relationships and to be able to speak to these key individuals around various topics, even further than climate and emissions. We were able to communicate our climate targets and requirements and could inquire around our suppliers' targets, their emission reduction initiatives, and their actions put in place, including their own engagement with their suppliers. Before collecting our supplier data through EcoVadis, that is a global ESG supplier management platform, we had originally collected this information a bit manually, This information contained documents such as environmental product declarations and disclosure around our supplier scope 1 to 3 emissions. This really helped us to build that platform of sharing and engagement. Secondly, engagement and incentivization. We had hosted ESG workshops with our suppliers on sustainability efforts and goals. These workshops as well had stretched beyond climate and emissions and included topics such as biodiversity, circularity, and water. We had seen these sessions as education and training opportunities by sharing experiences and learnings both ways. And then we are working closely with our responsible supply chain team to review and establish climate procurement criteria to make sure that the correct screening information is included in these processes. And lastly, innovation and collaboration. By participating in industry initiatives and working groups such as Solar Power Europe and the Ultra Low Carbon Solar Alliance, we are able to speak with and hear from like-minded companies and individuals, get access to research and documents on key topics that are of relevance to us. And then in addition, an added bonus is that government and international regulations are also driving decarbonization. I would like to spend this last slide on very few key learnings and takeaways. It is important to remember that when engaging with partners and suppliers, remember that each company has their own material topics that may vary in terms of prioritization. They are also all on their own journeys in terms of looking at their emissions and what their plans can be to reduce these. So data and information that you may receive from external parties can differ in the methodology and assumptions applied. Thus, it may need to be further discussed and explored before it can be collated or used by your company internally. Given varying best practice standards out there, we know that it's a bit of a different place to try and navigate all of these different standards that are out there and finding the right one that suits your company's needs and goals. I would say the last but not least is continue with constant communication and sharing of learnings within the value chain with your suppliers and your partners. This will really help us to ensure that we get closer to reducing the global emissions within our industry and that we do that together. Thank you so much for your attention and taking the time to join into this webinar today. I wish you all a really good afternoon and morning.
Thank you, Deline. It was very interesting to hear also all of the different actions that you had as a company. So it's good for insights for other companies if they want to do the same, very practical. So thank you for that. And now our last but not least is we have Emine, who is going to be presenting from Storebrand. She is the head of climate and environment at Storebrand. She has experience from the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment and now leads Storebrand's work on climate, environment, and company engagement. So I look forward to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much for having me here, and for those of you who are listening in. As you heard, I'm from Storebrand Asset Management, and if you're not familiar with us, we are Norway's largest private asset manager, and we have been working on sustainability since 1995. And biodiversity has been part of our investment process for a number of years now, both in terms of environmental risk assessment, but also part of our engagement with our investee companies. And I have been personally working on biodiversity since 2008. And over the past years, I have seen that biodiversity has not got the attention and action it rightly deserves, but that is slowly changing. Investors are increasingly recognizing that loss of biodiversity is a financial risk to our portfolios. And similar to climate change, nature-related financial risk can be described and analyzed through the lenses of physical and transition risk. And that is what we're trying to do now, trying to identify risk and manage it in a more systematic way. So yes, so last year, Storebrand made a commitment to biodiversity through the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge. We committed to collaborate and share knowledge on biodiversity, to engage with our investee companies. For us, it will mean the companies with highest negative impact, to assess our own impact, set targets, and after, of course, reduce our negative impact, and be transparent about our work on biodiversity and report on it publicly by the end of 2024. And we did this together with more than 90 financial institutions, which shows that biodiversity is becoming a key material issue to financial institutions. And the main obstacle when it comes to biodiversity is lack of data. So data on nature is much more complicated than data on climate change. For climate change, we have one commonly agreed on metric, which is CO2. And greenhouse gas emissions contribute equally to global heating, regardless of where in the world they occur. For biodiversity, that's not the case. Biodiversity impact vary significantly depending on the location. And I don't think we will get one single metric for biodiversity. We will probably have several, but there are some important frameworks and tools under development. And there are three frameworks that I would like to bring your attention to. The first one being Nature Action 100. Many of you might be familiar with Climate Action 100 Plus, which is the collaborative investor initiative on climate. Right before Easter, Storebrand, together with 11 global financial institutions, announced that we will be establishing a global platform to engage with companies and policymakers to halt biodiversity loss. We are now in the process of identifying systemically important companies, and this will be launched over the summer months. And these investors will be expecting companies to set targets that are scientifically validated. So the Science-Based Targets Network are helping companies developing guidelines for companies to set targets. So I would recommend you to look into that. And then finally, you're familiar with TCFD. There's a new acronym in town. It's called TNFD, the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, which will be the standardized way of reporting on biodiversity. It will release its recommendations by the end of 2023. And it's centered around the 4 pillars that you're familiar with. It's governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics. In addition, it will be asking companies to report on double materiality. It means that you will need to report on how your company impacts nature, but also how the loss of biodiversity, how degradation of ecosystem services such as pollination, water, and so on will have an impact on your company. And although the reporting framework is not ready until next year, we're already asking companies to get TNFD prepared. And in the next slide, you can see that we already issued a case study together with a Norwegian company called Grieg Seafood, a seafood company, a pilot study together with WWF and NINA, which is a research institution here in Norway, where we considered various tools to report on biodiversity. And the conclusion in very short is that it is already possible to get started with biodiversity reporting. And the 6 indicators which were mentioned by Agatha that CDP has included is a very good start of doing this. Then I would like to go more into details on our approach to biodiversity. What have we done? So in the absence of data, our main focus have been what is the main driver to biodiversity loss? And according to the IPBES, the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, there are 5-6 drivers to biodiversity loss, and the main being land use change. And that has been our approach to biodiversity, with a special focus on deforestation in tropical forests. As you know, tropical forests, they're important. They're rich on biodiversity, but they're also important for climate change because they function as carbon sinks. And our overall goal has been to prioritize sectors with high impact on biodiversity to mitigate negative risk. So we have identified the 4 main drivers, which is soy, cattle, timber, and palm oil, the soft commodities. And in addition to that, it's not only about making one company to improve its sustainability practices, but it's about driving systemic change. And in order to do that, you need to also engage with policymakers and also downstream companies. So we have been engaging with the Norwegian seafood industry because they are actually buying soy from Brazil because it's an important ingredient for the fish feed. So it's about influencing through the value chain, but also being in dialogue with local authorities and governments. And we have laid out clear investor expectations and KPIs to measure progress. So we have been working on deforestation since 2012, but in 2019, we got a standalone commitment, a policy, saying that Storebrand will not, I think the wording is, we will have deforestation-free portfolios by 2025. And at the COP26 in Glasgow last year, we had 35 financial institutions making similar commitments. And in order to have deforestation-free portfolios, you need to map your portfolios, identify companies at risk. At that time, there were no ESG data provider with that kind of information. The main ESG data providers that we use, the investors use, they didn't have one single indicator on deforestation, and the biodiversity data set was very poor. But luckily, there are tools out there. So we teamed up with a Norwegian NGO called Rainforest Foundation Norway. We assessed 10 leading tools that could help investors to map their portfolios. For Storebrand, we combined two tools, Forest 500 and Trace. Forest 500 identifies the most influential companies, the 500 most influential companies. It is at policy level, so it doesn't say much about risk exposure. It says about risk awareness. And the challenge we face with companies that they have good policies in place, but there's an implementation gap. So we combine that with satellite data provided by Trace. It's developed by Global Canopy and Stockholm Environmental Institute, which allowed us to identify 50 companies at risk. So over the past year, we have been in dialogue with these companies, either individually or together with other investors. If the breaches were severe, we have ended up by excluding them from our investments or put them on observation list. Last year, we also used the AGM season to escalate dialogues. We filed a resolution on deforestation, which got 99% support from other shareholders. And I just want to show our expectations on deforestation, which should be quite familiar to you because it's centered also around TCFD. We want companies to have a commodity-specific deforestation policy, covering the whole supply chain, sourcing geographies, a strong governance structure, traceability. Traceability has been one of the most challenging ones with moving targets such as cattle. You can move the cattle, and they often, I don't know if you heard the term cattle laundry, but you can cut off the chip on the cattle, and you can move the cattle around and pretend it's deforestation free, which is not. And we want them to also monitor and verify that their suppliers are compliant with the company's deforestation policy. And then, as I said, we are complementing our work on corporate engagement with sovereign dialogue. So with Storebrand, together with a UK investor called Blue Bay Asset Management, we set up this initiative 2 years ago to also be in dialogue with government of Brazil and Indonesia to halt deforestation. We are currently 60 investors in almost 20 countries, having high-level dialogues with vice president, governor of central bank, minister of environment, and so on, because this is very complementary to the work we're doing. And at the end, they're the one creating enabling environment for businesses and for financial industry. And just to sum up, currently we are, now that we have more tools available, we are now conducting an assessment, identifying sectors and companies with both high negative impact, but also dependencies on biodiversity. And this will be the basis for a new engagement strategy going forward. So this is all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amina. It was very interesting. Very good to hear that there is a new kid in town with the TNFD. Seems like it's very useful. So it's good that we have it here. And yeah, so this is going to be the end of our webinar. Thank you so much, all of you, for attending. I hope you found it interesting. I at least found it very interesting. As mentioned, you can always ask any questions that you have to us at news@CEMAsys.com. And yeah, thank you for panelists for coming. Very inspiring presentations, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye bye.